Janine Ellis, how did you begin the process of going international?
We did a strategy meeting. We looked at the company as it was and we looked at our growth. We thought, okay, our job is to grow. And we knew that the market could only sustain, the Australian market with 22 million people only could sustain so many juice bars without starting to cannibalise and affect the business itself. So at that point, we decided that it was important that we actually start researching overseas. So I did a trip to Washington with my international person. She's my franchising person now. She now runs the international side of things. And we went to Washington, we started doing some research. And then we did we toured a number of other countries and we looked at what the brands were in the shopping centres and that was really in the marketplace. And it really became clear that there was a #1 coffee brand, there was a #1 fashion brand, there was all these #1 brands, but there was no one in the category that owned health or owned juice. So we knew that there was a window of opportunity and we thought it was about 4 or 5 years that we needed to get into it. So we invested heavily in trademarks, like we're probably invested now in the millions, but we have invested heavily in trademarks and in research and started the process of actually starting to go into international. Then the question is, how do you enter international? Because there's so many different angles. There is direct entry as a company store, and there's many Australian carcasses overseas of direct entry. There is franchising, which few people have done it very well, but the ones who have done it well have done it very well. There is the Subway model, which is actually, instead of master franchising, it's individual franchises still connected to another company in America. So there's a number of ways. So we went and spoke to some of the top players. There's a company in America called Carl's Jr. and Hardee's, and we looked at them, we spoke to them, and we looked at their model, and we quite liked it, which was the master franchise model.
Is that what you do in Australia?
No, we do direct entry. We're basically the Subway model, which is we have about 30 company stores ourselves, the rest are franchise, and those franchise are direct franchise with us, the company.
So the model you're going to introduce overseas is quite different.
It is a different model. So instead of having an individual franchisee that speaks to us, and we've got 100 of them in a country, we have one master franchise who actually is responsible for growing that in that market. And when you actually do an agreement with them, they promise to open so many stores, or promise as in contractually promise, to open so many stores over so much period of time, and they have got the task of doing that. And we have the tasks of supporting them, we have the task of training them, giving them materials, giving them the IP or licensing the IP, all of those things to ensure that they can run this concept successfully over there.
But you've got all sorts of other issues. I mean, manufacture as well, of course.
Yes, look, manufacturing is a really interesting one. What you do with a master franchise, they're responsible for finding their own suppliers. And every single country has their own legislation with regard to what can come and can't come in. We have exported the yogurt that we use in Australia to 5 or 6 different countries, but we've had many challenges also. I mean, you've had to have a special certificate to go into Europe. You have to have pretty much a special certificate everywhere to get your yogurt being dairy from a cow, which has potentially mad cow or foot and I mean, it's a learning curve, like there's no learning curve, but it is their responsibility. So some of those markets, like Chile, for example, and Portugal, use a local supplier. So we've worked with them to try and find a local yogurt supplier to ensure that it meets our taste profile and our recipe. So it works in different markets.
Do you then choose a region or a country, or how do you distribute those master franchises?
We believe there's a number of P's that make a concept successful. It's product, it's position, it's promotions, but it's also people. So we did, at the very early days, we did a matrix on what countries that we believe the Australian concept of Boost juice bars can actually work. And so we went, okay, these are good countries we'd like to enter, and we've got a calculation of how many, based on the Australian model, based on their disposable income, based on their Coke factor, based on everything factor. The next one we needed to get was the right people. Now, we get inundated with international inquiries. We probably have more international inquiries than we do domestic. So we're able to have a huge pool of people. Now, if we wanted to, we could be in 50 countries, no problems. But it is so critical that we find the right people with the right resources to be able to actually grow this brand successfully in other markets. We are looking at it as a long-term strategy, not just about a little bit of money up front and forget the rest. It is very much a long-term strategy that we look.
When you talk about a little bit of money up front, do you get the money from the different franchisees to make all this happen?
Yes.
Or do you have to invest more and more?
As a business model, it is very minimal outlay of cash for us. In actual fact, it's incredibly cash positive. How it basically works, the master franchisees, they commit to a number of stores in a region over a period of time. That number of stores is then calculated per store of how much they pay as an upfront fee to get into the business. So they might do a 20 store model and it might be $17,000 per store, and that's the figure we get in for that. In there you've got to do training. I mean, to be honest, people go, wow, that's quite lucrative. But to be honest, to do it properly, it costs between $170,000 and $220,000 per country to do it properly. By the time you train, by the time you do your legals, by the time you visit the country 3 or 4 or 5 times, by the time you manage that expenses at the back, it is, you do not get, so people who think that they can just do a quick fix, if they're going into the wrong way, because you have to invest into it, because really what you're after is the long-term success and the royalty stream, because that's a maintainable earning, not just this one-off, one-off fee.
Yours is probably, though, more difficult than most because of the sort of product that you have.
In actual fact, it's probably easier than most. There is fruit in every country in the world. There is.
But when you talk about food and milk and yogurts and...
Milk is difficult, however, it's not as difficult as cow, or not as difficult as chicken. I mean, some of those chicken concepts out there, when they had bird flu, I mean, the business dropped, to 10%. I mean, Kentucky Fried Chicken became Kentucky Fried Fish. That was serious problems that they had with those products.
What sort of advice would you give to anyone listening to you now who thinks, gee, I could do that with my product?
A lot of people think that businesses are easy. They think some businesses are easier than other businesses. No business is easy. I don't care if you sell socks or you sell juice or you're actually an investment broker. No business is easy. So you have to go into business with sensibly. You do need to take risks, because without risks there's no reward, but the risks are calculated risks. The risks are well-researched risks. I think it's really critical that you surround yourself with amazing people, because in business, success or failure will depend on the people you have with you, because you can't be everything and you can't do everything, so you need to rely on great people. And
to a great extent, I gather you've relied on DC Strategy.
DC Strategy, which was founded by Rod Young. Rod Young's been part of our business for many years, actually from inception nearly. I think we had 5 stores when Rod got involved. So he's probably a friend as well as a business colleague along the journey, to just try and, with his experience in franchising and his experience in business in many aspects, has been a huge advantage to us to try and avoid some of those mistakes that a lot of companies make.